This story is titled, My Sister Stayed Friends with My Cheating Ex-Wife, so I Cut Ties. Now, after my ex stole her boyfriend, she is begging for my help. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. I've been sitting on this story for a while, trying to figure out how to even start explaining the absolute clusterfuck that my life became. But after seeing some similar posts on this sub, I figured maybe writing it all out might help me process this mess. Plus, maybe it'll help someone else avoid the same mistakes I made trusting the wrong people. First, let me set the scene. I'm 36 million, working as a construction site manager in the Midwest. Nothing fancy, I'm just a regular guy who started from absolute scratch. Right after high school, while all my friends were heading off to college, I started as a basic laborer on construction sites. Minimum wage, breaking my back carrying shit around, learning everything I could about the trade. My dad, who's gonna be a major asshole later in this story, actually gave me shit about it, saying I was wasting my potential by not going to college like my perfect little sister. But you know what? I didn't give a fuck. I knew what I wanted to do, and I was good at it. 15 years of busting my ass, learning every aspect of construction from the ground up, dealing with entitled architects who've never set foot on a real construction site, handling impossible deadlines, and managing crews of guys who'd been in the business longer than I'd been alive. It wasn't easy, but I worked my way up to site manager. And let me tell you, the satisfaction of building something real, something that'll last, that's worth more than any fancy degree. Now, about my ex Sarah, 34F. Man, typing that name still makes my blood boil, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I met her through my sister Jessica, 34F, back in 2016. See, Jessica was the academic one in our family. Full ride to some fancy university, joined a sorority, the whole 9 yards. Sarah was her sorority sister, and they were thick as thieves. Should have been my first red flag, honestly. Sarah was different from the women I usually dated. Super educated, came from money, worked in marketing, or as I like to call it now, professional bullshitting. When we first started dating, she'd make these little comments about my job that I stupidly ignored. Stuff like, "Oh, it's so interesting how you've made something of yourself without college," or "It must be so refreshing to do something so hands-on." Looking back, she was always looking down on my career, but I was too blinded by what I thought was love to see it. The funny thing is, my income from that lowly construction job was what bought our house. A beautiful 3-bedroom ranch-style home in a nice neighborhood. Sarah's marketing salary wouldn't have qualified her for a cardboard box under a bridge, but somehow I was the one who needed to better myself. The irony isn't lost on me now. My parents, oh boy. They never let me forget the difference between me and Jessica. Every family dinner was a highlight reel of Jessica's achievement. Jessica's design won an award. Jessica's starting her own business. Jessica's client list is growing. Meanwhile, I just managed a $2 million project ahead of schedule and under budget. But that wasn't intellectual enough to matter. Those first 4 years with Sarah were good, or at least I thought they were. We dated, moved in together, started planning our future. I was actually proud of how well we complemented each other. Me with my practical skills and steady income, her with her corporate connections and social skills. We got married in 2020, right in the middle of COVID. Had to have a small wedding, which pissed off her family to no end. They wanted some huge fancy affair. But honestly, that was the least of our problems. We talked about having kids, started planning for it even. I was working extra hours, taking on more responsibility at work to prepare for the extra expenses. Sarah seemed happy. We were looking at houses with bigger yards, talking about school districts, all that future parent stuff. I even started a college fund, because even though I didn't go to college myself, I wanted our kids to have that option. But here's the thing about happiness. Sometimes it's just an illusion. Sometimes you're building your whole life around someone, thinking you're both working toward the same goals, when really they're living a completely different life behind your back. And sometimes the people you trust most, your family, your own flesh and blood, they're the ones who help keep that illusion going. Everything seemed perfect on the surface. We'd been married for 2 years, had this beautiful house, and I was actually thinking about surprising Sarah with this cute little nursery design I'd sketched out. Yeah, construction guys can be creative too. Man, I feel like such an idiot now thinking about all the time and energy I wasted planning a future with someone who was already checking out. It was a Tuesday when everything went to shit. I remember because I just landed this huge contract at work. We're talking a $5 million project that would have set us up for years. I came home early, thinking maybe Sarah and I could celebrate. Found her sitting at our kitchen island, the one I'd installed myself, by the way, with this weird look on her face. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and instantly know something's wrong? Like the air gets thick and heavy? Yeah, it was like that. She was wearing this blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday, hands wrapped around a coffee mug like it was a life preserver or something. She didn't even look up when I walked in. "We need to talk," she said. 4 words that never mean anything good in the history of relationships. Then came the confession. Turns out my dear wife had been sleeping with Brad from her marketing team for the past 2 months. But oh no, she wasn't telling me this because she felt guilty. She was telling me because she wanted to be honest and work on our marriage. Direct quote, "I think this could make us stronger if we work through it together." Like, what the actual fuck? Who cheats on their spouse and then tries to spin it as some kind of couples therapy opportunity? But it gets better. She actually sat there and tried to explain how it just happened, because apparently you can accidentally fall onto someone's dick multiple times, and how Brad understood her in a way I never could. You want to know the real kicker? While she's sitting there confessing, her phone kept lighting up with messages. Guess who they were from? Yeah, Brad. This asshole was actually texting her while she was confessing to cheating with him. The audacity of these people, I swear. I just stood there for a minute, staring at this woman I thought I knew. 6 years together, 2 years of marriage, all those plans we made, and she threw it all away for some dude in a suit who could quote Shakespeare, whatever the fuck impressed her so much. "Do you love him?" I asked. Probably shouldn't have, but I needed to hear it. She had the nerve to start crying. "It's complicated," she said. "Brad and I connect on an intellectual level that's different from what you and I have." There it was again. That subtle dig at my intelligence, my education level. Even while confessing to cheating, she couldn't help but remind me that I wasn't good enough for her precious, intellectual standard. I didn't yell, didn't throw things, just walked over to the liquor cabinet, another thing I'd built with my own hands, and said, "I want you out of the house by tomorrow." She started protesting immediately. "This is my house too. You can't just throw me out." Fun fact, yes, I absolutely could. The house was in my name only because her credit was shit when we bought it. All those fancy degrees, and she couldn't even qualify for a mortgage. Ironic, right? "You've got until tomorrow evening," I said. "After that, I'm changing the locks, and anything left behind is going to Goodwill." "But where am I supposed to go?" she whined, like she hadn't been sleeping at Brad's place half the time anyway. "Not my problem. Maybe Brad has room for you. You two seem to connect so well intellectually. I'm sure you can figure it out." She started crying harder then, saying she'd made a mistake, that she'd end things with Brad, that we could go to counseling. But you know what? The moment she mentioned that intellectual connection with him, something in me just died. All those little comments over the years about my job, my education, my simple way of looking at things, it all clicked into place. I spent the next hour packing up her essential stuff into garbage bags while she followed me around crying and trying to explain, put everything by the front door, told her she could come back with a police escort to get the rest of her things later. "You're being cruel," she said. "This isn't like you." "You're right," I replied. "The old me would have probably forgiven you, would have blamed himself for not being intellectual enough for you. But that guy's gone. You killed him." I slept in the guest room that night, listening to her sob in our bedroom. The next morning, she was gone. Left her key on the kitchen counter with a long letter about how sorry she was and how she hoped someday I could forgive her. I burned the letter in the backyard grill. The day after Sarah moved out, I decided to tell my family what happened. Figured I should do it in person. You know, be mature about it and all that shit. Plus, I really needed my family's support. Called my parents and sister, asked if we could all meet for dinner. They agreed, probably thinking I was going to announce a pregnancy or something. We met at this local steakhouse, the kind of place with peanut shells on the floor where you can hear yourself think. I remember ordering a coda, trying to figure out how to drop this bomb, when Jessica just fucking says it. "Is this about you and Sarah getting divorced?" Because she already told me everything. I nearly choked on my beer. The way she said it was so casual, like she was commenting on the weather. My parents looked confused. Clearly they hadn't been filled in yet. But Jessica? She already knew. And not just about the divorce. "What exactly did she tell you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Jessica took a sip of her wine. She always ordered the expensive shit, even though she made less than me, and said, "About her and Brad. About how they connected. About how she's been struggling with your differences." That's when it hit me. The way she said differences, all delicate like she was handling fine china. It was the exact same tone Sarah had used. And suddenly, all these little things started clicking into place. "How long have you known?" I asked. The waitress came by, but I waved her off. Didn't think I could stomach food at that point. "A few weeks," Jessica admitted, still acting like this was totally. "Sarah's been confiding in me. She's really going through a lot right now." I looked at my sister, my own fucking, and it was like I was seeing a stranger. "A few weeks? So you knew she was cheating on me and you didn't think to, Oh, I don't know, tell your brother? That's when she went into full therapist mode. You know the type, speaking all soft and reasonable like they're explaining something to a child. It wasn't my place to get involved. Sarah needed someone to talk to, someone who could understand the complexity of the situation. The complexity? I could feel my voice rising. What's complex about fucking your coworker behind your husband's back? My parents finally caught up to what was happening. Mom started crying. She always does that when shit gets real. And Dad just sat there looking disappointed. Though I couldn't tell if he was disappointed in Sarah, Jessica, or me. But Jessica wasn't done. Oh no. She leaned forward, placed her hand on mine like she was about to dispense some great wisdom and said, "Look, I know this is hard for you to understand, but relationships aren't always black and white. Sarah's been feeling intellectually isolated. You have to admit, you two operate on different wavelengths." I pulled my hand away like her touch burned. Different wavelengths? Are you fucking kidding me? She cheated on me. Yes, and that was wrong, Jessica said in that same condescending tone. But maybe if you'd been more attuned to her needs, more willing to engage with her on an intellectual level. I cut her off. On an intellectual level? You mean like Brad? The guy she's been fucking behind my back? Don't be crude, Jessica said, wrinkling her nose. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're reducing a complex emotional situation to something base. That's when I lost it. Not violently, I don't do that shit. But I stood up, knocking my chair back. Let me make this really simple for you, since apparently I'm too stupid to understand complexity. My wife cheated on me. My sister knew about it and helped her hide it. Those are the facts. I didn't help her hide it, Jessica protested. I was trying to help her work through her feelings. She wanted to tell you herself, to try to save your marriage. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in the middle of the restaurant. Save our marriage? By fucking another guy? Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If you just listen, Jessica started, but I cut her off again. No, you listen. You're my sister. My sister. When you found out Sarah was cheating, your first call should have been to me. Not playing therapist to her. Not giving her relationship advice. Not helping her justify her bullshit. Mr. Your brother. The person who used to put band-aids on your knees when you fell off your bike. The person who beat up Tommy Wilson in 8th grade for calling you names. Remember that? Jessica had the decency to look uncomfortable. That was different. We were kids then. Yeah, we were. And apparently you've forgotten what loyalty means since then. I pulled out my wallet, threw some cash on the table. So here's how this is going to go. You can either cut Sarah out of your life completely, no contact, no friendship, nothing. Or you can forget you have a brother. Your choice. That's not fair, Jessica said, tearing up. You can't make me choose between my best friend and my brother. Best friend? I laughed again. She's my wife. The woman who promised to be faithful to me. The woman who's been fucking another man while you helped her justify it. And you're calling her your best friend? You're displaying toxic masculinity right now, Jessica said, straight-faced. I shit you not. Those were her exact words. This kind of black and white thinking. This aggressive response. Toxic masculinity? Really? That's what you're going with? I looked at my parents, who were just sitting there letting this happen. You guys have anything to add? Mom was still crying. Dad just shook his head and said, maybe we should all calm down and discuss this rationally. Rationally? I was done. So fucking done. Okay, here's rational for you. Jessica, you have a choice to make. Sarah or me. Let me know what you decide. I walked out. Left them sitting there in that steakhouse with their fancy wine and their complex emotional situation. Drove home to my empty house and started packing up every photo I had of Jessica and me growing up. The next day, she texted me, I love you, but I can't let you dictate who I can be friends with. Sarah needs support right now, and I won't abandon her just because you're unable to process this situation maturely. And that was that. My sister chose my cheating ex-wife over me. But wait, it gets even better. A couple weeks later, I found out Jessica was the maid of honor at Sarah and Brad's wedding. The wedding they had 2 weeks after our divorce was final. Let me explain what happened next. You know how some people's social media looks like their life is just one big success after another? That was Jessica's Instagram feed for the past few years. Every other day it was some new post about growing her empire or elevating her brand or whatever buzzwords were trending that week. She'd started this graphic design business with 2 college friends, and according to her posts, they were crushing it. At family gatherings, which I still attended because fuck letting them drive me away from my cousins and aunts, I'd hear my parents bragging about how successful she was. Jessica just landed another big client, or Jessica's company is expanding. Meanwhile, I'd just secured a $10 million construction project that would employ 50 people, but that wasn't prestigious enough to mention. But here's the thing about social media. It's all smoke and mirrors. While Jessica was posting about manifesting abundance and sharing photos of her fancy downtown office, rented by the hour for photo shoots, I later found out, Her business was hemorrhaging money. The first hint that something was wrong came from my cousin Mark. He works at a local bank and had heard through the grapevine that Jessica's business had bounced several checks. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Turns out our little girl boss had been running her business like a pyramid scheme. She'd take deposits from new clients to finish work for old clients, always playing catch-up, never actually making a profit. She'd maxed out multiple credit cards, trying to keep up appearances. The fancy car in her Instagram posts, leased, and 3 months behind on payments. The designer clothes, all bought on credit and mostly returned after being photographed. The house of cards finally collapsed when one of her biggest clients sued them for failing to deliver on a major project. Apparently, they'd taken a $50,000 deposit and produced exactly jack shit. The client got a lawyer involved, and suddenly all of Jessica's creative accounting came to light. Her business partners bailed, leaving her holding the bag. They'd been smart enough to structure the company so Jessica was the majority owner, meaning she was personally liable for all the debt. Within weeks, she was facing multiple lawsuits and drowning in legal. Her beautiful apartment she was always posting about, the one with the perfect natural lighting for a creative soul, yeah, she got evicted. Hadn't paid rent in 6 months. The landlord finally got fed up with her excuses about clients being late with payments and temporary cash flow issues. She tried moving in with her boyfriend Mike, some tech startup guy she'd been dating for about a year. But Mike had a roommate, and they weren't too keen on having a third person living there rent-free. They gave her 2 weeks to figure something out. The best part? Through all of this, she was still posting on Instagram like everything was fine. Pictures of her working in coffee shops because she couldn't afford an office anymore. Posts about embracing minimalism because she had to sell most of her stuff. And my personal favorite, a long post about how sometimes the universe forces you to reset and find your authentic path when she had to move out of her apartment. My parents finally told me about all this because they were worried about her. She'd refused to move back in with them, saying she was too independent for that. They'd offered to help her financially, but she'd turned that down too. Apparently, her pride was the only thing she had left, and she was clinging to it like a life raft. They called me asking if I'd let her stay with me for a while, just until she got back on her feet. You know, because I have that big house all to myself, the one I bought with my simple construction job money. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Let me get this straight, I said to them. The sister who sided with my cheating ex-wife, who hasn't spoken to me in 5 years, who's been looking down her nose at my career while running her own business into the ground, you want her to live with me? Mom started with the waterwork, her go-to move when she's not getting her way, saying how family should help family. Dad tried the guilt trip, talking about how we used to be so close as kids. Yeah, we were close, I said, right up until she chose to support the woman who cheated on me. Remember that? Because I sure as hell do. Here's the kicker. They actually tried to use that against me. Said maybe this was my chance to be the bigger person and show Jessica I was past all that. Like I'm supposed to just forget how she betrayed me because she failed at her business? You know what's really ironic? All those times Jessica and Sarah looked down on me for being just a construction worker, making those snide comments about my lack of education. Now I'm the one with a stable career, a paid-off house, and a healthy bank account. Turns out all that simple hard work paid off better than their fancy degrees and intellectual conversation. After I shut down their first attempt to get me to help Jessica, I thought that would be the end of it. Stupid me. I forgot the cardinal rule of dealing with manipulative parents. They never take no for an answer. It started with daily phone calls. Every single day, like clockwork, they'd call with some new angle. Mom would cry about how Jessica wasn't eating properly, because apparently that was my problem now. Dad would try the stern disappointment approach, talking about family obligations and how I was letting my pride destroy our family. One particular conversation stands out. It was a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from overseeing a difficult concrete pour that had gone late, and Mom calls, sobbing. Jessica's lost so much weight, she wailed into the phone. She's not sleeping. Don't you care at all? I was exhausted, covered in concrete dust, and completely out of patience. Funny, you weren't this concerned about my well-being when I found out my wife was cheating on me, and my sister knew about it. That was different, Mom protested. You're stronger than Jessica. You've always been the strong one. And there it was, the real truth slipping out. Jessica was the fragile one who needed protecting, and I was the tough guy who could handle anything. Never mind that I'd gone through a divorce, betrayal, and the loss of my sister all at once. Never mind that I'd cried myself to sleep for weeks after finding out about Sarah's affair. Nope, I was the strong one, so my pain didn't count. Dad got on the phone then, pulling out the big guns. Son, we raised you better than this. After everything we've done for you, I cut him off. Everything you've done for me? Like what? Constantly comparing me to Jessica? Making me feel like shit for choosing construction over college? Please, enlighten me about all these wonderful things you've done. We put a roof over your head, he shouted. Fed you, clothed you, supported you. That's called the bare minimum of parenting, I shot back. You don't get a medal for doing what you're legally required to do as parents. The calls kept escalating. They started involving other family members, telling everyone how I was letting Jessica suffer because of an old grudge. Some of my aunts and uncles actually called me to talk sense into me. I had to explain the whole story to them. How Jessica had helped Sarah hide her affair, how she'd chosen Sarah over me, how she'd been the maid of honor at Sarah's wedding to Brad 2 weeks after my divorce. Funny how my parents had left those details out of their version of events. But the real crazy started when the calls and flying monkeys didn't work. One day, I came home from work to find them parked in my driveway. They'd driven 2 hours to ambush me at my house. Mom was crying. Shocking, I know. And Dad was doing his best authoritarian father impression. They refused to leave until I listened to reason. Jessica's living with us now, Mom said. Like this was somehow news that would change my mind. We're retired. We can't afford to support her indefinitely. Sounds like a Jessica problem, I replied, not even getting out of my truck. We need your help, Dad said. Financially. You wouldn't even have to see her or talk to her. Just help us cover the expenses until she gets back on her feet. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Let me get this straight. You want me to give you money to support the sister who betrayed me? The one who makes 6 figures according to her Instagram? The one who's been looking down on my simple job for years? She made a mistake, Mom wailed. She's sorry. Is she? I asked. Because she hasn't called to tell me that. Hasn't texted. Hasn't shown a single sign of remorse. But now that she needs money, suddenly I'm supposed to forget everything and play the good brother? They kept pushing, standing in my driveway, refusing to leave. Dad started talking about how they'd failed as parents because I turned out so heartless. Mom went full guilt trip, saying she'd never forgive herself for raising such a selfish son. That's when I'd had enough. I pulled out my phone and called the cops. Right there in front of them. Hi, yes, I have 2 people refusing to leave my property. Yes, they're my parents, but they're trespassing. No, I've asked them to leave multiple times. You should have seen their faces. They thought I was bluffing, right up until they heard the police dispatcher on the other end of the line. You wouldn't dare, Dad said, his face turning red. Try me, I replied. Then to the dispatcher. Yes, I'll hold. They finally left, but not before Mom delivered her parting shot. I hope you're happy with yourself. Your sister might end up homeless because of your pride. No, I called after them as they got in their car. She might end up homeless because of her own bad decisions, just like she might end up friendless because she chose my cheating ex-wife over her own brother. So there I was, enjoying my drama-free life with my new girlfriend, when someone starts pounding on my door at 11 p.m. I grab my baseball bat, because after all the harassment, I'm not taking chances, and check my security camera. And who do I see standing there? Mascara running down her face, looking like a complete mess. Jessica. I almost didn't open the door. 5 years of silence, and now she shows up in the middle of the night? But something about the way she was crying. This wasn't her usual manipulative tears. This was ugly crying, the kind where you're too broken to care how you look. I opened the door, keeping the bat visible. Hey, better safe than sorry. She took one look at me and just broke. You were right, she sobbed. About everything. About Sarah, about Mom and Dad, about all of it. You were right, and I was so wrong. Turns out there was a lot Jessica didn't know. While she'd been staying with Sarah and Brad, she'd been working late trying to save her failing business. Meanwhile, Sarah had been getting closer to Mike. Yeah, Jessica's boyfriend. The same Mike who'd kicked her out because his roommate wasn't comfortable with her staying there. Plot twist. There was no roommate. Mike had been sleeping with Sarah for months, and he wanted Jessica gone so Sarah could move in. Jessica found out in the most brutal way possible. She'd come home early from a client meeting that got canceled, hoping to surprise Mike and maybe patch things up. Instead, she walked in on Sarah and Mike in her bed, the bed that Brad had bought for their guest room. But wait, it gets better. When Brad found out about Sarah and Mike, he completely lost it. Turns out this wasn't the first time Sarah had cheated on him. Remember how Sarah and Brad got together in the first place? Yeah. Apparently once a cheater, always a cheater. Brad kicked both Sarah and Jessica out, since it was his house from before the marriage. Sarah tried to claim half of everything in the divorce, but Brad had an ironclad prenup. Guess she should have read the fine print before signing it. So now Sarah was living with Mike, Jessica was homeless, and Brad was filing for divorce. Karma really said, let me handle this real quick. Jessica started telling me everything, how Sarah had been manipulating her for years, feeding her lies about our marriage, making me sound like the bad guy, how our parents had enabled everything because they were so invested in the image of their intellectual daughter and her sophisticated friend. I was so stupid. Jessica kept saying. I threw away my relationship with my brother for someone who turned out to be exactly what you said she was. I didn't say anything for a while. Just let her cry it out. Then I asked the one question I'd been wanting to ask for 5 years. Why did you choose her over me? Jessica wiped her eyes and said something that actually made me laugh. Because I was an entitled, pretentious bitch who thought I was better than everyone else, including you. At least she's self-aware now. She told me how she'd been living a lie for years. The successful business, the perfect relationship, the sophisticated lifestyle. It was all smoke and mirrors. Meanwhile, I'd built a real life for myself. No pretense, no fakery, just honest work and actual success. I used to look down on your job, she admitted, but you've built something real. All I built was a house of cards. She asked if she could stay with me, not permanently, just until she could find a job and get back on her feet. Said she'd understand if I said no. I thought about it for a long time. 5 years is a lot of hurt to get over. But you know what? Seeing her there, completely broken, all her pretensions stripped away, it was like seeing my little sister again. The real one, not the fake, sophisticated version she'd been playing at. Ground rules, I said. First, you get a real job. No more of this girl boss bullshit. Second, you cut all contact with Sarah. Third, you go to therapy to deal with your superiority complex. And fourth, you help me renovate my basement. I've been putting it off for months. She actually laughed through her tears. You're letting me stay? You're my sister, I said. You fucked up. Massively. Epically fucked up. But you're still my sister. It's been 2 weeks since then. Jessica's sleeping in my guest room, applying for regular jobs, no more entrepreneurship for now, and actually learning how to do physical work, helping me with the basement renovation. She has paint in her hair most days, and her fancy manicure is ruined, but she seems happier, more real. Yesterday, she got a job as a regular graphic designer at a local marketing firm. Entry-level position, but it's honest work. She cried when she got the offer, said it was the first real achievement she'd had in years. Sarah tried to contact her once, probably looking for a place to stay, after things with Mike inevitably go south. Jessica blocked her number. Our parents are still trying to contact us through other family members, but we're both standing firm on the restraining order. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. As for me, life's pretty good. My construction company is expanding. I've got my sister back, the real version, not the fake one. And I'm finally finishing my basement renovation. Sometimes karma takes her sweet time, but when she delivers big. Edit. Since everyone's asking, yes, this is all real. Sometimes life is stranger than fiction. Edit 2. For those asking about Sarah and Mike, last I heard, she's already started flirting with his best friend. Some people never change. Edit 3. Thanks for all the awards and support through this whole saga. Sometimes you need strangers on the internet to help you realize you're not crazy for setting boundaries with toxic family members. Final update. Jessica read all these posts. Hi sis, and wanted me to add that she started therapy and is working on her issues. She also wants everyone to know that pretending to be something you're not will eventually blow up in your face. Just be genuine, she says. Pretty good advice from someone who learned it the hard way.